But brings us to our next presenter, Stephen Friend, a very high contributor to the user groups. Always good to see, and always insightful. So over to you, Steve. You're going to talk about. You're going to bring us into the theme, shake us down into the theme of the day with the product in focus. Welcome.
Absolutely. Thanks very much, Grant. And thanks to Serena. I think that was just a fantastic session and really good to hear the MYOB perspective on this journey that we are all on in terms of the transformation of our businesses. And I think it's really interesting to actually hear that fact that, even MYOB with their budget, very deep pockets, I'm sure, and the size of their organization, they have their challenges as well in terms of transformation. We hear that they're still on their journey in terms of really understanding their data now that they're capturing it more efficiently. How do they actually get insights out of that? And that's exactly what today's session is about. So the connected business, and I'll let you read this slide from MYOB, who positioned this a few years ago as one of the sort of cornerstones of the MYOB Advanced story, how MYOB Advanced can support organizations in their digital transformation process. And we all know that a transformation isn't just about the technology. It's very much so about the people and the processes as well. And often they're the two things that are the hardest to actually get right in terms of that change management piece and that we all need to undertake within our businesses. But the connected business is really about a few points. Firstly, it is about recognizing these silos that we have in our organizations. Often we have these disconnected systems, duplicated data, manual entry between their systems, and that causes all sorts of friction within our business. And we see this screenshot here of the disconnected business with all of these different silos of data separate and disjunct from each other. Firstly, the connected business concept is about bringing connectivity between those, either where all of that data resides within a single system, of course being MYOB Advanced, or where we're leveraging integrations and the industry-leading API-based approach to integrations that Advanced offers to create a seamless flow between these systems. Once we've got that in place, though, it's really about how we leverage this. And the connected business concept works to 4 key pillars, which have each been a topic or a theme within our user groups. So this is the final of this theme. The previous user groups are all actually on our YouTube channel, which you can refer to. But we've got complete control, the empowered workforce, experiences that matter, and of course, real-time insights being today's topic. Now, complete control really is about that governance, auditability, financial integrity. It's about making sure that we have the checks and balances in place, and from that, our people are free to actually make decisions within the constructs of the system. Empowering our workforce is even more important today in these COVID times, where we need to make sure that our people have the right tools accessible at the right time. And that can often be about mobility, but also just ease of access. And we all know that Advanced really assists with that, with the simple browser-based and the Advanced app as well, which empowers our employees. Experiences that matter is about how we actually create a focus on the more emotive aspects of that relationship with our client, relationships with our employees, and of course our partnerships with our suppliers as well. How we leverage our systems and our data and our processes to create these experiences that matter. And of course, the theme for today's session is real-time insights. And real-time insights is about that, not just capturing the data, but how we leverage that and get insights out of that data. And depending upon the type of organization that we're in, for a manufacturing company, that might actually be about better understanding our production process, our costs, our cost to serve, the importance of inventory levels. If we're a services business, it might be about that client experience. But it's about how we harness that information and use that to take action and make real decisions and informed decisions from that. Of course, it's also about this deep customer insights that help us position our business not just today, moving forward so that we're understanding where the industry is going and keeping ourselves unique and ahead of the pack. And without any further ado, I'm going to hand over to Nick Savage-Matey, who's actually going to take us through the product as one of the sort of those pieces and identify what we can do from a product perspective in terms of the techniques that we have, the tools that we have to deliver some of those real-time insights to our business. So over to you, Nick.
Thank you very much for that, Stephen. So what I'm going to be presenting today is I'm going to be going through a little bit of a run through of generic inquiry evolution, and based on the theme of real-time insights, it's really one of those key areas within the system itself that has, over the time I've been using it, has evolved into really kind of a very powerful tool for reporting on what's actually happening in your business. So what I'm going to be covering off today is I'm going to be looking at how to build smarter GIs, so smarter generic inquiries. I'm also going to introduce the concept of slide panels as well. And then I'm going to have a little look at dashboard parameters. So you've got your normal kind of dashboards, but how do we actually introduce parameters within those dashboards? And then I'll mention in terms of OData and mobile reporting, so how to actually publish generic inquiries and dashboards directly to your mobile devices or to other reporting tools. And then we'll have a little look at something that I as an implementer used to use quite a bit, which is mass actions and updating. So you can use generic inquiries to actually update information from the generic inquiry itself. And then lastly, I'll be having a little look at the pivot tables that you can build on top of the generic inquiries. So some of these features you may or may not use right now, but they're definitely useful features to actually know about. So like I said before, generic inquiries are really kind of a crucial part of MYOB Advanced, and a generic inquiry is a screen that you'll see in terms of when you go into customers or stock items or projects, you get shown a grid. Now the generic inquiry then feeds itself into, especially from this point of view, this is one of our dashboards, and each of these different dashboard pieces is driven from a generic inquiry. So whether it's a KPI, or whether it's a data grid, or whether it's something like a chart or one of these little KPI tools as well, all behind the scenes is a generic inquiries themselves. Now I'm going to look at it just from the perspective of a kind of like a sales team perspective, just to give you an idea of how things can be run from that area. But you obviously can build this from different places as well. Now, if I jump into my receivables and I just go, firstly, just look at a normal kind of generic inquiry that I've altered and adapted. So this is my normal kind of customer generic inquiry. And from a generic inquiry point of view, I mean, to start off with, generic inquiries are great because you can build them however you want them to see. And you can have different columns, and users can move columns around, and they can also, you know, add in filters and things like that. But you can drop any generic inquiry out via Excel via this little button at the top. Now, in terms of filters, if I was actually searching for something in here, I could type directly into this little search box at the top. Or I can say, for example, look at a customer class and I want to pick out a certain customer class. I could actually use the column header to dictate and find the class I wanted. Or simply, if I wanted to, I could go and highlight a cell and go Shift F, and that will actually do an automatic filter for me on that column in question. So Shift F is a really kind of good little hotkey to know about. Now, I can also build, if I separate that into a customer class, I can actually build a filter if I wanted to, based on the data that I had at the time. So I can actually go in and go save as, and it'd save it as a filter. So you can see this one here is my European customers, and you can see straight away that I've actually saved it as a filter. And underneath, we've got a property of customer class and the value of EU cust. So that's just one way that you can kind of set up filters on a normal generic inquiry. And also from that point of view as well, you can see that you can share them or set it as your default for when you first load into there. Now, the other bit in terms of generic inquiries is that you can actually add in what we call slide panels. So these slide panels give you the ability to link into another generic inquiry. So in this example, if I look at my sample customer, you can see that just simply by going through the different customers, I can actually select one and see that they've got a couple of invoices that are current, and they've got one which is actually outstanding, so it's 90 days plus. Now, what this means is that firstly, I can show other generic inquiries, so I can go onto my sales orders, for example. But secondly, you can see that I can actually put in things like formatting of colors. So in this example, it's a great example of if my age is above 90 days, then I can actually get this column to show red based on the date itself. And the same thing with the top ones, they're current, so they're in green, so it doesn't mean we don't have, so it means we don't have to worry about them right now. Now, the good thing about these extra generic inquiries is we can actually click on the reference number and drill into the invoice in particular from there. So you can just click on it and it just pops out another screen for you. So it's a very useful way of actually seeing multiple things from a generic inquiry, and just via this slide panel, you can just go from there as such. So quite a useful part, and that's under the customization in Edit Generic Inquiries as a navigation pane section inside the generic inquiry function if you've got customization as an option on your user profile. Now, going back to our dashboards, dashboards themselves have the ability to, obviously, like I said before, you can publish these generic inquiries. So simply by going into the design mode, and again, you can suit these to suit your user, so the user can have access to put in their own, or you can just lock them down to say what they actually need to see. So from here, you can see that each one of these has an edit mode, and each one of these, if I just drill into it, actually is linked to a generic inquiry screen from there. So once you've built your generic inquiry, you can then feed these into the different widgets, and you can actually then go and dictate what is in them as well. And you can also include the filters and use those filters that you've built to push into the generic inquiry itself. Now, the other thing as well is if I go add new widget, you can see down here, these are the methods and types of widgets that you can actually use. So there's quite a few different variations. And one useful tip as well is you can actually use this copy and paste to actually load the generic inquiry below, and then just manipulate that one to change it slightly to suit something else. So it means you don't have to build something from scratch. You can just go through, add it in, and then just go and update it based on what you actually need at that time. Now, another feature that probably gets a bit underutilized, I would say, is the ability to actually add parameters to the dashboard. So what this means is, you can see here I've got a customer dashboard that's got a customer record at the top. And if I click on in here and go to 123 Cafe, you can see that as soon as I select that customer, it now shows me my opportunities, my sales orders, and also, again, my AR aged outstanding. So from just that one little parameter, I can then just go in whether it's projects, tracking my costs, whether it's a supplier with bills and outstanding payments that you need to make, you can just use that parameter from within there. Now, how that is done is if I just jump into my design and just go to properties. So you can see within the properties, there's a parameter tab. So if I click on the parameters tab, you can see in here that I've actually added in a parameter which links to my customer table, and it then links to my field, which in this case is the account number itself. Now, a couple of things as well, just to mention in terms of dashboards, you can allow users to personalize it. So if this is unticked, the users just get to see what you dictate. Whereas if you tick that, they can go in and edit things themselves and manipulate things themselves as well. But this parameters is really useful from the point of view of once you add it in, you can actually go into the filters of each widget and then say, I want to add this parameter and link it directly to the parameter above. Now, from the point of view of the dashboards, the reason why it's useful to set up these generic inquiries and set up the dashboards and set up things like parameters is that you can actually publish this to different reporting tools. So in generic inquiries, you've got an OData feed, and the OData feed itself allows you to actually push that out to Excel or push it out to Power BI, for example. But there are also other reporting tools which we'll look at a little bit later in this session. Now, one other thing you can do, though, is you can actually publish it to your mobile app. So before, when we're in the properties, you can see in here that we got exposed via mobile application, which is ticked on mine. And so to better represent that and to better kind of show you, I'm going to actually link into my mobile phone. Now, as you can see from here, I've actually got down the bottom, I've got generic inquiries. So for example, if I look at my leads, so if I'm out on the road and I just want to check my leads, for example, I can go in and see my leads and it gives me a list of all the leads that I've got. And if I want to, I can just drill directly into the lead itself. From the salesperson point of view, if I look at my salesperson, so this is quite useful. I've built a salesperson dashboard and I've just tried to build it so it's more to do with KPI widgets and they're more visual rather than data grids as such. And from there, I can just actually go in and say, let's have a look at let's look at new leads. Is there anyone that I can actually contact whilst I'm around? And I can then just click on the lead itself and drill straight into that lead and potentially assign it to myself. Now, lastly, I can also go into the customer dashboard that we just looked at a moment ago. And from the customer dashboard point of view, it works in exactly the same kind of way. So I can click on and find 123 Cafe, and I can now see that there's a couple of opportunities for this customer. And also I can see there's some outstanding invoices. So if I'm on the road and I'm just about to go into the meeting, I can have a quick look at this and go through what they currently have in terms of orders and opportunities, but also in terms of anything that they are actually owing. So like I say, these dashboards themselves, very useful because you can set them up for the mobile app, and also very useful, especially if you set up things like parameters to actually flow through into the dashboard itself. So I have built one before, which is salespeople, and you just put in salesperson and it shows all of their sales for products, sales for customers, and so on and so forth with budget. So quite a powerful tool from that point of view. Now, the next thing I want to show you is in terms of the receivable side of things, I actually want to show you a generic inquiry which uses actions or mass updating. Now, this generic inquiry, firstly, we have coloration based on not only columns, but on rows. So from this point of view, I actually have a customer here, which is on credit hold right now. And so that's why the remaining credit limit isn't in red, whereas the other ones above are, because they're not on credit hold. So it's actually telling us these should be on credit hold and they're currently active, whereas this one, they're still on credit hold, but they're not actually active customers, but they're on credit at the moment. So say, for example, I've gone out on the road and I said, I want to put an order through. I've noticed that actually their open orders is, 33,000, but their current balance is actually, $500. So can you just take them off hold? So I can just get the accounts receivable team to just tick this. And then under actions, I can then say remove credit hold. So it's a very simple way of just doing it from one screen and doing it en masse if I need to. So I could go through and take these two off hold, for example, and just via the actions. And so, like I said before, the mass actions and the mass update feature is quite a useful one to be able to utilize just from a generic inquiry turn that on, and then we can just bring them and make them active all over again. So from there, if we wanted to, we could just go back and go actions and put them back on hold, just via that little tick, and go in via the actions itself. So quite a powerful tool that I personally have used quite a lot. Now, the last bit that I'm just going to go into is I'm going to show you my invoiced items generic inquiry. Now, the reason I'm going to show you this is because I've built this essentially to be every single item that has been invoiced in terms of stock. Now, the reason I've showed you this is previously I mentioned about filters, and if I go there and go save as, it would have created a filter for me. But you've also got an option called save as pivot. And this save as pivot, it lets you create pivot tables based on the generic inquiry. Now, if I go into this edit pivot table, this is when I go save as pivot, it'll show you this screen straight away. And from here, I can then grab the columns from the actual generic inquiry and drag them across, and then put them into the relevant. So I've got rows for inventory. My columns is account ID and invoice date. And then my values are quantity and X amount, which is a total for the line. Now, from this point of view, I've got my properties, so I can show them as collapsed for the IDs. Now, for invoice date, I'm showing it as collapsed, but you can also see as well, I can specify, because it's a date, I can specify it to be for a month or a day or a quarter. And then the formatting above dictates how it's going to display. Now, the last thing I can do as well is I can actually drag account ID and inventory ID up the top here to be used as filters. So if I click on my settings to bring it back into play, it now means I've got my inventory, I've got my accounts, and if I click on the plus, it'll show me my dates in terms of months that I've been selling things. And also, if I go to account, I can actually go into here and find 123 Cafe. So I'm using essentially another parameter, and I can now see that based on this customer, this is what they bought from me. And if I expand it out, I can now see the different months and what they purchased over that time period. So going back and looping back round, in terms of generic inquiries themselves, there's a lot of power that has been created over the time, and it's definitely an area that you should probably look back into just in terms of these different items that I've gone through. So thank you very much for listening, and I'll pass back to Grant, I believe.